Have you ever wondered what it's like to work in law enforcement? Here on Behind the Star, we share stories about the Orange County Sheriff's Office, Central Florida's largest law enforcement agency. From forensics to dispatch to the deputies on patrol, we'll talk to the brave men and women who protect our community. This is Behind the Star, the official podcast of the Orange County Sheriff's Office. Welcome to Behind the Star, the official podcast of the Orange County Sheriff's Office. My name is Jon Busdeker, the official host of Behind the Star. And I want to tell everybody we've been really busy this week with some really cool stuff. If you're not following us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, go ahead and do that. You just got to look for Orange County Sheriff's Office. The one in Florida, don't mix it up with the one in California. We got way better stuff going on here in Florida. But this week we are at SWAT Roundup, which is a really cool international event here in Orange County. We host it here, and SWAT teams from all over the world come here to compete, including our SWAT team. And we're going to do some updates on what they do and how they do. I don't know how they're going to place. It's Thursday right now, and the competition goes through the weekend. So hopefully good luck out there to our Orange County SWAT team. And so follow us on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and everywhere that you follow social media. We are there. So today I got a special guest. This is somebody who I don't even know exactly what he does all day, and so that's why he's here. I have Austin Moore. His title is General Counsel. He's in legal services here at the Orange County Sheriff's Office.
Hey, good afternoon, John. How's it going?
Pretty good. And like I said, I'm really excited to talk to you because you're in our office a lot. You come and talk to us here in strategic communications. I see you around the building, and I know you're an attorney, you're a lawyer, you've studied law, but I don't know exactly what you do around here at the Sheriff's Office. So why don't you explain what exactly is General Counsel? What is legal services?
So General Counsel, I am basically the manager over the legal services division here at the Orange County Sheriff's Office. So it's myself and 4 other attorneys. I have a paralegal and 2 other legal assistants in our office. And basically, the way I try to describe it to people is we are a company of about 2,400 employees. Our business is law enforcement.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. They don't know we have that many people that work here at the Sheriff's Office.
It's a big place. And so like any company where there's a lot of people and a lot of things going on, there's a lot of legal issues. And so we're kind of the behind the scenes people for a lot of the things that go on in this office.
Yeah,
so
when you say legal issues, that's a broad range of things. What do you mean by that? What are some legal issues?
So there's some that are specific to law enforcement. So case law that comes out, right? The Supreme Court rules that a certain type of search violates the 4th Amendment. So then we go back and look at all our policies and procedures, the training that we provide deputies, and we say, hey, new rule, attaching a GPS tracker to a car requires either a search warrant or a probable cause. And that wasn't the way we were doing it before. So that's one of kind of specific to law enforcement.
So a daily, I mean, that happened. I don't want to say daily. There aren't Supreme Court decisions every day, but laws change all the time. And you don't think about that. You think, in my head, I think, well, our job is to go to court or to make sure we don't go to court. But there's way more than just that.
That's right. And so the laws that we're looking at are local laws. So if a county ordinance changes, that might affect the way we do business. If a state law changes, that might affect the way that we do business. And then obviously federal rules will affect the way we do business. So we're monitoring all those every day to make sure that no significant legal updates are coming out that require us to change the way that we do business, because ultimately at the end of the day, if we do something that's not in accordance with any of those laws, we subject the sheriff and the sheriff's office to liability, which we don't want to do.
No, we don't want that, because that costs taxpayers too. I mean, we want to do what's right, we want to do what's legal, but we also want to do what's the economical or financial, fiscal responsible thing to do as well.
That's absolutely right. And so that leads into one of the other things we do, which is manage litigation that the sheriff's office might be involved in. So if we are the subject of a lawsuit, then our office will manage the lawsuit, and then we work with outside counsel to see whether we're going to settle, whether we're going to go to trial, and different strategies as we deal with different types of litigation. And that could be anything from a car accident to someone who claims that they were falsely arrested to someone who wants their property and evidence back. There's a multitude of different types of litigation that are managed by our office.
I want to get into all those things. Those sound really, really fascinating to me because once again, as somebody I've worked here about 8-9 months now, and I don't even know the range of all the, I'm sure, legal issues that we have to deal with as an agency. Because when you think about it, you might watch the news or you see things on TV or in the newspaper, and you think, oh, it's just maybe our deputies did something that caused somebody to sue us. But there's more than just that. There's just so much more. So we'll get into all of that. But I want to find out first, like, how did you end up here at the Orange County Sheriff's Office?
So probably the short story is that I worked at the public defender's office for 2 years and had an opportunity to get a job at the city of Orlando where I worked in their litigation department. So I handled all types of litigation for the city of Orlando, again, from the car accident to the claim about police use of force or false arrest. And I enjoyed the police part of it so much that I ended up moving over and becoming in-house counsel for the Orlando Police Department. And then I was there with now Sheriff Jon Mina. And when he moved over to the sheriff's office, he called me and asked whether I'd be willing to join the legal team here at Orange County Sheriff's Office. And obviously, I jumped at that opportunity.
So where are you from? Where are you from originally?
Born and raised in Champaign, Illinois. And then I went to law school at University of Iowa. And like most Midwesterners, kind of got sick of the weather. And so moved down here to Orlando, Florida, and been here since 2002.
Did you move here specifically to work as a public defender?
No. So I moved down here because my wife had moved down here
before.
Oh,
that's what you got to do. Yeah, you got to follow her.
So my girlfriend at the time was down here, moved down here to be with my girlfriend, got the first job, that came available. So I was working in workers' compensation defense.
Oh, that sounds fascinating.
Right. So I did that for maybe a year, and then I went to do medical malpractice defense for 6 months. And I was miserable because I realized I wanted to be in the courtroom. And so that's when I moved over to the public defender's office and was in the courtroom, so much so that I got sick of being in the courtroom. And
Too much of a good thing.
That's right. And it is a high pressure, high stress position. And we're getting ready to have kids. And so it just became a little bit too much. And so that's why the city of Orlando job was perfect.
Okay. All right. So then how long were you at OPD?
11. Well, I was at OPD for 2.5 years, but the city of Orlando for 11 years.
So you said at some point there you really started getting interested in the law enforcement side of it. What was it about law enforcement that interested you?
Yeah, so something about the way that those cases develop, and specifically the fact that if you're in federal court, you are arguing about the United States Constitution, right? So you're dealing with Fourth Amendment, First Amendment, Fifth Amendment, and that's the stuff that, really lawyers don't get an opportunity to get into those issues, but that's kind of the heart of what law is about for most law students. And so the opportunity to kind of practice in those areas was just too tempting for me to pass up. And so when those cases came through when I was at the city of Orlando, I was grabbing them and I was making sure that those were my cases. And so, and then you're also in federal court, which is just kind of another level. And that's where lawyers, if you're into litigation, that's what you're going to want to do.
Yeah. And I've never even been in that courthouse before, the federal courthouse here in Orlando. If you're from here in Central Florida, it's downtown. It's actually on the west side of I-4. Beautiful complex, but it's not like the Orange County courthouse. It's not as open, I would say, as that one.
Yeah, when you go in there, there's nobody in there. So you walk in the front and there's the security guards and then nothing. Versus, the Orange County courthouse, it is hopping all the time.
Yeah.
And so it can be a little intimidating in that federal courthouse, and obviously the judges can be intimidating as well. So, but if you can thrive there in the federal courthouse, you really feel like you've kind of made it.
Yeah.
And so even that gave me the opportunity when some of those cases went up on appeal, then you're going to the 11th Circuit Federal Appeals Court to argue in front of a panel. And the next step up from there is the Supreme Court of the United States. So you're not far from really the pinnacle of legal practice.
Yeah. One day, maybe.
Yeah. Well, probably not now because we don't, like I said, I'm in the background now when it comes to a lot of these issues.
So you came over to the sheriff's office this year in 2019?
That's correct.
Okay. And so tell me, like, what's a typical day like here? How does it sort of pan out? Because I'm sure every day is different, but what's it like when you?
So I know you've seen me in here a couple times already today. So the strategic communications deals with a lot of public records issues.
Yeah.
And
So let's maybe start there, because this is the part of the agency I'm at, and so with public records, if you don't know, Florida has a very open public records law. So anything in email, a lot of times, a lot of communications, it's all open to a public record request, and obviously it has to go through some layers sometimes to make sure critical information isn't sent out. So maybe you can talk about that, like how do you get involved with strategic communications?
So I don't know how many requests we get here at the sheriff's office, but I'm sure it's in the tens of thousands of requests every year. Some of those requests come in and they ask for certain information that we may not want to give out, or we may not be able to give out, right? So say there's an ongoing investigation into a homicide and someone requests the file on that case. Some of those records are probably going to be public record. As you noted, we have a really broad public records law, and they err on the side of saying we want the community to know what's going on. And I think this sheriff errs on that side as well when I've talked to him about public records law. So, but with that being said, if there's information in an investigation which, if released, would jeopardize the investigation, then we're not going to want to give that out. And the legislatures recognize that, there are certain criteria and certain information that should not be public because of the ramifications of release. So
it might be something where, the person who did the crime is the only one who maybe knows that, and maybe we know it, and if we put it out there, it could ruin the investigation.
Right. So one of the common things is the caliber of the bullet, right?
Okay.
Or the shell casing, right? We never really want anyone to know that we know that information, because that's one of the ways that we can check to make sure that, we've got our guy, or we've got our gun, or that type of thing. So, that's kind of one of the main ones for a homicide, but there's lots of different information that comes out that's unique to each case where you're like, look, they just can't. We'll talk to the detective and say, hey, we got a request. We need to release this document. Is there anything in here that can't come out because it might jeopardize your investigation? Answer yes. Here's the 3 things that I don't want you to release. And then I'll get with strategic communications or our records department and say, all right, if you go through Florida statute, here are the exemptions that allow us to not release this information.
Yeah. And so that's a lot of your daily, or part of your daily job at least, is to be very familiar with what is and what isn't allowed here in Florida.
Yeah, that's right. And so with regard to media requests, they're more likely to push back. If we say, look, this is not a public record, it's not uncommon to get a response back from someone in the media saying, tell me what your exemption is, justify why you're not releasing this information to me. And then it's also not uncommon, if we end up in that situation, to get an email from the lawyer from the media saying, all right, I've talked to my client, I want to know why you're not releasing this information. Oh, and if you don't, I'm prepared to file a lawsuit to force you to release this information.
I used to work at a newspaper. I used to work at the Orlando Sentinel here. I used to work at Channel 2 here in Orlando. And so I didn't cover the law enforcement and police. I never had to get that far, but I've been in the room when they've talked about those things. How often does it go kind of farther? Like, does it usually go that far? Does it usually kind of get more settled here at the local level?
Yeah, so I'd say probably in my last year at OPD, I had 3 or 4 requests that rose to me getting an email or a letter from an attorney saying, hey, we don't agree with your interpretation of public records law, and if we can't come to an agreement about this, then we're going to file a lawsuit.
Yeah,
so
and that's their job too. Like that, they are hired by that organization to do that, and so that their job is to write nasty emails sometimes.
Right. And obviously, and this comes up on a daily basis where I'm either talking to my other attorneys, or I'm talking to deputies or someone else in the department. There's a lot of gray area in the law. So while we may feel one way about a public records exemption, the media may interpret it a different way.
Yeah.
So that's why we have the court system, is because when there's a discrepancy about how to interpret the law, we go to the judge and they figure it out for us.
So getting away from strategic communications, I assume you also do work with our deputies. And so I guess my question is like, what's a typical case or a typical, I don't want to say complaint, but what's a typical reason you would work with a deputy?
So number one, no typical day. Like I just know that when I walk in at 8:30 that there'll be somebody waiting for me or a phone message about something, and I have no idea what it's going to be about.
And you're like, I've never dealt with that before, but I'll figure it out.
So I just got a call from a deputy before I walked in here that he had an issue where there was some communications between some individuals, and that communication was via Snapchat.
Okay.
So he filed a search warrant with Snapchat to get the communications.
Yeah, and Snapchat, if you don't know, if you're an old timer like me, I'm 37, but I don't really use it. Snapchat, you can talk on it, you can send video, but it only is usually only up there for like a day or so, right?
Right. I think that's the main the beauty of Snapchat is that whatever you send or text whatever you snap goes away so that no one can know what you snapped. Now, I don't know exactly how that works with Snapchat, but I know that it's not uncommon for our deputies or detectives to file basically a search warrant with Snapchat to try to pull back whatever those snaps are.
Okay.
So I get a call from a deputy saying, hey, I sent them the search warrant. It's been 20 days. I haven't received a response back. What should I do? So I'll have them send me the contact info for legal at Snap, and then I'll reach out to them and say, hey, what's the holdup? The judge ordered you to produce this information. Why don't we have it yet? We'll work through it like that.
That's interesting. I had no idea that sort of happens behind the scenes, but like you said, it probably happens all the time.
Right. And dealing with, and so it's more common, this is kind of a new phenomenon. It's different when you're doing a search warrant on a house or for records, like at a hospital or something like that. But with the Facebooks and the Snapchats, and I mean, there's just a multitude of these cloud-based computing services that all have information, and they're not as responsive as kind of these brick and mortar places would be.
And I'm sure some of that has to do with they probably get hundreds of requests a day from other law enforcement agencies and other just legal issues that they have to deal with that, they probably have to go through a lot of those a day, and they might be stonewalled. I have no idea, but I'm sure there's just a lot of it because they're global companies.
Well, there's that, and there's still always, these concerns about client privacy. Those people that are using Snapchat, I mean, that's why now every website you go to like immediately pops up like, I agree to the terms of this.
It's the thing that nobody reads.
That's right. Yeah, I agree to the terms of these services. And those are those companies saying, hey, if we get a subpoena, we might release your records.
Yeah. So going back to search warrants, are you involved with that as well? Like if a deputy wants a search warrant, do you have some sort of say in that?
So yes. I mean, at the Orlando Police Department, legal reviewed every search warrant that went out. That would be impossible here at the Orange County Sheriff's Office just because of the sheer volume of search warrants that we're issuing.
Okay.
So if there's a special search warrant that they're like, hey, I'm not sure about this, or I'm not sure whether I have probable cause, can you review the search warrant? Then I will do that. The other thing we do is, again, because the fact that technology is evolving so quickly, our search warrants are having to evolve. So,
and I'm sure the laws haven't maybe evolved either.
That's true. So, yeah, so there are some search warrants that we are crafting and that we work on that relate to new technology that's out there. And so that's something, just updating the templates that our deputies are out there using is something that on a weekly basis, we have one of our detectives work with one of the attorneys in the office in looking at the search warrants.
Are there often times where you kind of have to be the stern dad and you're like, I just can't do this. Like, this won't pass muster, I guess. Like legally we can't do this, and you have to be the person in the room that has to say that.
Right. So look, the deputies are out there. They want that information. They need the information for purposes of their investigation, but it has to be done the right way.
Yeah, because you don't want it to fall apart later.
There's several levels. I say, number one, I'm looking out for making sure that we're doing things the right way. And the reasons are because I don't want to get the sheriff's office sued, and I also don't want to jeopardize their criminal investigation. And so if you don't do things the right way, you're subjecting yourself to either liability or that your criminal case goes away. And that's just a waste of everyone's time. So yeah, it's not uncommon for the deputy to be saying, look, I know I've got this. And I'm saying, I've tried a lot of cases. I know that this is not going to pass muster. And even if you can get a judge to sign off on this, I'm not comfortable that this is something the sheriff's office can put forth. And that's fine. And we don't just say, no, you can't do it. We give them options. Say, look, you don't have this, but if you were to go out and investigate this in this way, and maybe you were able to come up with information about what's happening at this house or what this person is doing, then I see a pathway forward. Come back to me and we'll reevaluate.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, like you said, I mean, the whole point of it is we want our cases to go through, and we want them to, like you said, you don't want everybody to waste their time, because it's a waste of time for everybody.
That's right. Yeah.
So let's say, moving on to deputies still, let's say they were to get in a car accident or something, drive, and nobody's seriously hurt, but two cars hit each other. Does that come to your department as well?
So it doesn't come to my department in that the deputy is like, all right, I want to sue somebody. It comes to our department in that if there is litigation that results from that, meaning the citizen or the individual that's not a deputy involved in the accident, if they decide to sue the sheriff's office, we would get that claim, and then we would determine the best way to resolve that matter, which sometimes results in litigation, and sometimes there's settlement, and sometimes there's nothing that results from an accident.
So just like in real life, I mean, I say real life, just like in the regular world, I mean, if you get in a car accident, sometimes you sue them, sometimes you don't. It just depends on sort of the situation.
That's right.
So you said, how many people work in your office?
We've got 4. So it's with me, there's 5 attorneys, 1 paralegal, and 2 legal assistants.
So do they all do separate things or specific things?
Yeah. So I would say I'm kind of the jack of all trades. And then, so we have 1 attorney who primarily focuses on contracts, and you wouldn't believe the number of agreements that come through our office, from purchasing agreements to memorandum of understanding with other agencies. We have with Orange County Public Schools, I don't know how many agreements we have with them. So,
and that's really interesting, because you think we do a lot of stuff, like you said, with other agencies. A few episodes ago, we were at the aviation section, and we do some call outs for, Winter Park Police or Castleberry Police. If they need a helicopter, I believe we work with them, and I'm sure there's some agreements with that.
There's almost an agreement for everything we do with another agency. And speaking of helicopters, a couple of years ago, we bought a helicopter. So the contract attorney works on that. And I think it's a $4 million contract.
It is.
Yeah. And then also there was a time when one of the helicopters was down and needed a rental engine. That was all memorialized in agreement. And I've talked to her. She said that was one of the craziest agreements she's ever worked on. Huh. So we have a contract attorney right now. As you know, there's labor negotiations going on. So one of the attorneys from my office is in every meeting that occurs with that. So he's kind of our labor relations specialist.
Okay.
We do a lot of legislative work. So right now, 2 of my attorneys so bills are being filed right now. That's this time of year.
Yeah.
And so we are getting requests from the legislative team. Hey, I need some language about boat safety. Can you draft me some proposed legislation? So I know they're working on that right now. So there are people that have specialties, but we are all able to answer general questions about law enforcement, meaning those deputy questions, because we have an on-call attorney who's working 24/7. So we rotate that around.
Really?
But there's always somebody available. And we always tell the deputies during training, look, we don't care if it's 3 a.m, call. There's an attorney on call, and that's what we're here for.
And that's how we are here in strategic communications. If there's a shooting or something like that, we have somebody here, not me usually, ever, thankfully. But there's somebody on our staff that is ready for a phone call in case they have to do something. So it's the same with you in the legal department.
That's right. There's always someone on call. And so those general questions, you have to kind of be ready to answer. But as you know, I mean, there's no standard question. Every time you get a question, like, oh my goodness, this is not what I've dealt with, or the last time I dealt with this was 5 years ago. So we spend a lot of time in our office, sitting in each other's office going, what do you think about this? I got this call and they said this. And so, yeah, you can come in at any time during the workday, and you'll probably have us in each other's office discussing all kinds of legal issues.
What would somebody call you at 3 a.m. for? What couldn't wait till 8 in the morning?
Emergency search warrants.
Oh, okay. All right.
So, hey, we just got this. We're standing by this car. Do I need a search warrant to get in this car? And if so, if I say ABC, does that get me in the car? And does this qualify as an emergency that I can file with the court?
Oh, okay. And that's not, there's probably not like a list of what's an emergency. You have to make a determination.
Yeah, there's the chief judge issued an administrative order, which kind of tells you, but it's gray.
Yeah.
So,
Huh.
you kind of know what isn't an emergency. That's
Yeah.
pretty easy, but determining whether something is, it can be a little tricky, especially if you've just been woken up at 3 a.m. from a deep sleep, and you're trying to think back to your law school days about, probable cause and Fourth Amendment stuff.
Yeah. Do you work with other agencies or just talk to other agencies about how they handle cases, especially here in Florida?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of, it's a pretty tight-knit group of what we call police attorneys.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of people bouncing ideas off each other, and we've got a chat group where you can put out any question you might have. And then I still have all my old connections at the Orlando Police Department and guys that I kind of call and rely on to bounce ideas off of. So
How about court? Do you go to court often or not? Or does anybody in the department go to court?
Yeah, so every attorney in my office goes to court except for my contract attorney. So we have forfeitures that require us to go to court.
Oh, explain what that is.
So civil asset forfeiture is when we conduct an investigation and we determine that some sort of asset is being used as part of the criminal activity.
Like a car or something.
A car is the most common one. And there are certain rules and laws that allow us in certain circumstances to seize that vehicle.
Okay.
And then at that point, a civil case is initiated where then we prove to the court that a certain standard's been met and that we are entitled to seize that vehicle permanently.
All right. So if somebody was using a car to deal drugs or something like that, and you might come in and say, well, this is our car now, or we'll fight for this car.
That's right. So today there was a question about somebody that was stealing copper from construction sites.
Okay.
And they were using a truck and a trailer that they put the copper on the trailer. So we were looking at whether we could seize the trailer. It was parked in his mom's driveway. So then the question was, did we need a search warrant to go seize the trailer?
Could you see the trailer from the street? Or
we could,
All right.
but it's arguably in a place where someone has a reasonable expectation of privacy, in
Okay.
which case you would need a search warrant, even though we had probable cause to believe that it was used in the crime. So anyway, we will seize that trailer. We'll file a lawsuit to permanently have that become Orange County Sheriff's Office property, but that would require us to go to court. We also have risk protection orders, and that requires us to go to court for hearings. Motion for return of property. Someone gets arrested. We take their phone because it has evidence on it. The case concludes. Now they want their phone back.
Can they get it back?
Yeah, they should be able to get it back. It gets there's certain types of evidence which obviously you wouldn't be able to get back. And then sometimes the evidence has been, if it's part of a seizure, then that would determine whether or not they're entitled to get their property back.
So if we were to seize property, what happens to that property? This might not even be your department, but I mean, what do we auction it? Do we use it? Do we sell it? Do we burn it?
So classic lawyer example is it depends, right?
Okay.
So one of the things that we do, I think it's on a quarterly basis, I sign a document which we swear that we're taking all the drugs to a location to be disposed of.
Secret location.
Yes.
All right.
So certain things get burned. If it's a car, it might be a car that we could repurpose in some other way.
And I've seen this in the state of Florida. I don't know what county it's in, but one of the counties around seized a drug car, but it was like a 1965, super cool car that had big rims. And so they turned it into like a police vehicle that has like their logo on it, kind of like an don't do drugs thing, but it was a great idea.
Yep. No. So we've got cars that we've seized and we've repurposed for all different things here at the agency. Some things get sold, electronic equipment. Sometimes it could be reused. So I know in one case, there were a bunch of PlayStations and whatnot that were seized. We put it in the room where victims came down to interview with our detectives. Sometimes,
like child victims, yeah.
Right.
No, that's a great idea to reuse that stuff.
You put the TV and the PlayStation in there, and so that they can use it in that way. So there's different ways that the property gets disposed of, but we like it when we can repurpose it in some way.
Can you think of anything that was really strange that either here or at OPD that you may have seized that you're like, that's interesting?
No, I can't. I really can't. No,
it's usually regular stuff.
It's usually cars and electronics.
Okay,
those are the things that we seize that we keep. So I'm trying to think if it's anything really weird. I'm sure we don't. They are probably like, Austin, can we keep this? And I'm like, why do you need that? So
what do you like about working here? What do you like about your job?
So the best thing about this job is that it's something different every day. You just never know what you're going to encounter. The people that are here at the sheriff's office are great. They're all committed to, one singular purpose with regard to the community and following the sheriff's lead. So it's just a really enriching job for me. As far as lawyers go, you just don't do the same thing every day, and sometimes that's hard to find. So
when it comes to litigation or us getting sued, how do you sort of, I don't want to say draw the line, but how do you know to take it farther, or this is a time that maybe we should settle, or how do you know where's that line at?
Yeah, so we have a risk manager here at the sheriff's office. And then also the sheriff is part of the Florida Sheriff's Risk Management Fund. So there's a fund that kind of manages litigation. And so those people step in, and if I say, this is a great case, we're going to win it, and they say, yeah, but the risk is, even if there's a 50-50 chance, they might say, we'd rather just guarantee that we're going to settle this case for $20,000 than take the risk of going to trial, and maybe things don't go as well as you think, because trial is unpredictable. Juries are unpredictable. So that's their job. No matter how gung-ho an attorney might be, there's someone there saying, we're going to manage this risk and determine whether or not we're going to trial.
Is there a cap? If somebody were to sue the sheriff's office, is there a cap, they can only collect $250,000 or something?
So
it
depends. In state court, there is a cap of $200 per person, $300,000 per incident.
Okay.
There are ways around that, but in federal court, there's no cap.
Oh, okay.
So, and in fact, if you lose, you pay the other side's attorney's fees. So it can get really expensive when you're looking at dealing with constitutional law violations, which makes sense because, it matters, obviously.
All right. Well, we're glad to have you here so you can keep us out of trouble.
All right. Anytime. So far, I haven't had to bail you out yet.
No, not yet. Well, hopefully you won't have to. But thank you so much, Austin, for coming to talk with us. And we'll see you guys all next week on Behind the Star. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to Behind the Star. You can find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Also, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Until next time, I'm Jon Busdeker, and this is Behind the Star.